Welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Turn the Page. I'm your host today, Jenn, and I am here with the creator of let's say a project that took the world by storm, let's say last year, and is now manifesting as a physical book. Could I ask you to introduce yourself and your book, please?
Yeah, thanks so much, Jen. My name is Matt Kirkland, and I'm the dude behind Dracula Daily, which is an email newsletter that sends you bite-sized pieces of the book Dracula in real time through about a 6-month span via email. And we have put that together in a book that's coming out in just a couple of weeks. Yep.
It is so much fun. I subscribed very early on in the process, and it was it was really a delight to get a little piece of the novel in my inbox every day. And I thought it was, a really interesting way to encounter a novel I've read so many times. And it really made it new for me. But before we get into it too much, could you talk about how it came to be? Where did you how did the idea come about, and what was the sort of then implementation of that like?
Okay, so the idea came to me as I was reading Dracula with my daughter. I was reading the book over the summer, and she always wants to be up to date on what I'm reading. So she will interrupt me and say, "Hey, what's happening in the book you're reading?" She loves stories. And so that summer she was asking me, "Hey, what's happening in Dracula?" And as we talked about it, we realized we were almost in sync with how the characters were experiencing things. Everything happens in the book from May through November, and we were right in the middle of it in the summer. And I thought, gosh, it'd be fun if I could sync up in real time with the characters. But actually doing that would be a big hassle because the book, it's not told strictly chronological. It's pretty close, but it's not strict. And it jumps between character viewpoints. It would involve a lot of bookmarks and management to really figure out how to read the right sections at the right time. And I thought, man, what would be nice is if someone would just email me the right parts of Dracula to read today. And then once we had the idea, I just had to do it. That was it.
Nice. Yeah, it really is such a fun way to experience the novel, not all in one sitting, but to sort of let it sit with you and really think about it. It creates a lot more tension, I think, when you experience that way. And it really for me, brought the historical period alive because you were waiting on correspondence, the way that a person in the 19th century might. And so I'm wondering, were you surprised by the reception or what the audience sort of brought to it?
Oh, absolutely. There's I was totally surprised, and I think one of the avenues of that surprise, exactly what we were talking about, is how people engage with the real timeness of it. So right away, the book starts with Jonathan visiting Castle Dracula. He's in some peril. We're getting updates from him, and then we cut to Mina, who is somewhere else, and people immediately started saying, "Hey, where's my friend Jonathan? I didn't hear from him today." Started to have this kind of sense of anxiety about not knowing what was happening. And then you get kind of longer and shorter breaks in the story, or like you said, you get, someone writes a letter, but the other person doesn't get it for a couple of days or something. And so engaging with the story in real time let people kind of pretend like it was more real in just a real delightful way.
Yeah, it acquires a kind of documentary feel to it, the book equivalent of a found footage movie in a strange way. It's
Exactly.
a very immersive experience. And one of the best parts about the book is all of the extra material that accompanies Bram Stoker's text, because you also have a really cool selection of user reactions and reader reactions and art and memes and jokes. And there's just so much cool stuff there. How did that part of the project come about, and what was the selection process like for what to include?
Yeah, sure. So the whole idea about printing this book I came to it pretty slowly. As people, as the email list blew up, we had hundreds of thousands of people subscribing. There was this big kind of like fandom that emerged on social media. Tumblr was kind of where the biggest stuff was. And I was just following it. Like I was a fan of the fandom. So I had just like a gigantic screenshot folder of like beautiful art people had drawn or funny stuff that people had written. And as I was talking through this with other people, the idea that like, man, it would be so great to like collate this together and then print Dracula Daily in its rearranged form so you could kind of have the same experience from the emails, but just with a bookmark. Just, one ribbon bookmark you move day by day and you could read things in real time. And then you could get a little taste of this phenomenon that happened with all the reader responses without having to like be very online all the time, which I know a lot of people aren't. So once we had that idea, then it also, like the email list in the first place, it felt like, oh, that would be so great. I have to do it. The actual like gathering process, it was really like my family went on vacation without me, and I clocked out of my job at 5 p.m. and I clocked into Dracula duty at 5:01, and I scoured the internet and I asked people for permission for things for, until midnight, and I repeated that until my family came back to town. So it was just a lot of careful spreadsheet work and scouring social media sites, and then getting in touch with people to ask about, if they'd want to be included, how they want to be credited, if we could use some artwork and how we could pay people for that artwork, all that kind of stuff. It was very fun because the content is so engaging that it was a riot for me to do, but just a lot of grunt work on the computer, basically. Yeah.
I bet. Yeah. And it really is like a fascinating document of like the sort of like phenomenon that was the newsletter.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder, like, do you think it is attributable, I mean, apart from being like an awesome idea, like to the timing as well, because like what occurred to me is that it really makes like a community out of reading, which like can be a sort of solitary event, and I think that maybe we were all really thirsty for that, like in this sort of post 2020 pandemic world. Do you think that like it was sort of like a right thing at the right time thing kind of too?
Yeah, I feel very mystified about sort of what made it work and why. I think it hit the right people at the right time. I think definitely the world was ready for something to do together and kind of primed for some shared experiences. And I think we've also sort of lost a little bit of the sort of water cooler media conversations we can have in a streaming world where we get a whole season dropped at once and no one knows if they can talk about it with their friends because you're only on episode 3, but I'm up to episode 6 or something. So doling things out in these small bits at a time and in real time gave people that, that way to be in sync, whether you like it or not. Those are my only guesses. Yeah.
It was kind of like being in a book club, with the world
Mm-hmm.
at large.
Yeah.
And
Right.
it was, and I think also because it was sort of like a collective act of joy too, because like some of the
Mm-hmm.
art is so beautiful and the jokes are so funny, and seeing Dracula get the meme treatment was just like such a delight,
Right.
and I think that like so many of our collective online experiences are miserable these days that it was probably also, like we really needed a good, happy one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And one thing that I never could have predicted, but is amazing to me, is how that positive social experience came really, it came out of the text, but it came out of the actual text itself. So like Dracula is like a character that we know about vampires, even if you never read any of this stuff, like, what the deal is. But the community that sprung up around this did not find Dracula himself very handsome or charming. He was not the sexy vampire character, but instead everyone thought Dracula was kind of a monster. And everyone rallied around the other human characters who are terrorized by Dracula and who band together in these like sort of bonds of like friendship and affection for each other to protect each other and then go fight Dracula. And I loved that, just that response. It's so sweet to me that like, no, we all think Dracula's kind of a scumbag, actually.
Yeah, like it was interesting to see the layers of kind of like pop culture get stripped away, like for these
Mhm.
readers, because I think so many of us associate Dracula with like the universal like suave seductor type
Right, right.
character, but he is like just a weird little goblin in the and like,
Yeah, right.
and I also found it really sweet how funny the readers thought it was, like watching Dracula pretend to be a normal person, for
Yes,
Jonathan. Like that
yes.
was like him cleaning up in the background and making meals and like pretending he knows what it means to be a human. Like it was just like a really like I don't know, it's just like really fun to see all these different perspectives on characters that you think you know really well.
Yeah, the Dracula runs around in the background doing all the cooking and cleaning for Jonathan thing. It's a small little, bit in the book. The little clues to it are, half a page or less. But the way that people latched onto it is beautiful, but also it was those things came up on days when there just wasn't a lot of content. There was a lot of energy around it, but you were only getting a third of a chapter or a few paragraphs or something in your email those days. So it made this opportunity for people to really close read, and find all of these really kind of like beautiful nuggets or small ironies or just surprising things, and then kind of really lean into them. That's yeah, I was delighted by it.
That's a really good point. Like it is like kind of a nice tonic, I guess, to the binge model, of consuming media. And I also
Mhm.
too of like, so much of what we like watch these days or like consume, we're kind of like consuming while we do something else, like that whole like second screen theory,
Sure, right.
and so being forced to really slow down and consume a story like more slowly, I think is a really good sort of even mindful practice, to get a little cheesy about it.
Yeah, sure.
Mhm.
Yeah,
um
absolutely.
was there anything that like the younger readers picked up on that like completely changed your perspective on this story, or like was there anything in the reaction that really surprised you?
So I read a lot of Victorian literature and I kind of go through it pretty fast. So a thing that jumped at me right away that I just had never really kind of clocked to was just all the queer coding that's in the book, and then people sort of like leaned into it hard in sort of imaginative ways and art and fandom and just kind of sort of their like head canon about what's happening to these characters. It was really like delightful and fun to see. Yeah.
Mhm. It was kind of fun to see like yeah, Dracula and Jonathan get the like what are the characters I'm thinking of, like the our flag means death treatment, like
You're right. Yeah.
show these like little like odd little domestic moments, but
Mhm.
like it was yeah, like I really enjoyed that aspect of it, and I think I enjoyed how much like they brought out the humor that like is already inherent in the text, like because
Mhm.
it wasn't just their responses that were funny or how they viewed it, but like they really pointed out that there is like a lot of humor in the story. Like I think like
Right.
Lucy's three suitors, and like the
Mhm.
cowboy character, like I think we give gothic literature like a very serious reputation sometimes, but
Right.
there is humor and like goofiness already there a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, there's a point near the end where Dracula is kind of on the run and the crew is like doing a little sleuthing, trying to figure out, where he went, and they interview like a dock worker who is like, yeah, there was a guy who like had a straw hat on, which suited neither him nor the time. And someone was like, what? Dracula's been wearing like a big straw hat and no one told us? Like, this is, comedy gold here. But I loved it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And also just like to see readers comment on the parts that like haven't aged particularly well, sort of
Sure.
like reinterpreting it in our contemporary context. Like it really surprised me, I guess, like, obviously there are parts that like have not aged so well to modern readers and that strike us as like outdated or antiquated now. But like that really, I think, highlights like how much of it still does feel really
Mhm.
relevant, like it feels very modern in its storytelling and like concerned with sort of like taboo like transgressive topics, so I think it's interesting to see like the ways in which it is a relic of its time and also the way that it like why it continues to speak to people still, if that makes sense.
I totally agree. Yeah.
Mm. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about your other projects, because if I'm understand correctly, this came out of Studio Kirkland, and you've done a lot of other really cool stuff. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, Studio Kirkland is kind of our house brand for family-run side projects. So my real job, I have a software development firm. I'm a co-founder there. We make all kinds of like cool custom software for our clients. But at night and on the weekends, I just like to make stupid things for the internet. And a lot of them kind of come from responses where really like I just discover something. I was an art major, so I don't have any kind of scholarly background. I don't know about literature. I don't know about history. I'm kind of like learning things. So like one project, I got very into trying to find like what's the oldest thing that I can read that still feels like a human really wrote it, you know? And so I got a book of translated cuneiform tablets. And it turns out cuneiform tablets are very boring. They're, you know, receipts or short little letters or something. They're very ephemeral. It's not literature that, you know, was meant to be preserved. And I had the idea like, man, this is like someone's tweets just accidentally got archived for like 3,000 years. And then I thought it would be funny if you had a service where you could send them a dumb tweet and they would put it on a cuneiform tablet and send it to you in the mail. So I started that. So I have a thing called Dumb Cuneiform, where you send me a tweet and I will write it in cuneiform and send it to you in the mail.
I love that so much. I love like I think just personally, I'm a huge fan of like the kind of mashup of the like highbrow and the lowbrow, you know, like the
Sure.
extremely sophisticated and the extremely silly. And I think that is such a good use of cuneiform. And it does speak to, you know, how it was used in history, because yeah, like most of the writing that exists in history is that sort of, you know, ephemeral day-to-day stuff. So
Right.
and could you talk about the penny press too? Because when I
Oh
saw
yeah.
the website, like I was obsessed with penny presses when I was a little kid. And so when I saw that, it just like sparked joy.
Right. Yeah. So this is something that my wife and I have been planning for a long time, and finally like are executing. Launched it this summer. So a penny press, you know, this is like a machine you see in tourist traps where you put in, you know, 2 quarters and a penny, and you turn a handle, and then it smashes the penny and engraves some design of the tourist trap that you're at. So we started a little project called Local Crush. You can see it at localcrush.club, where we bought a penny press. We made designs that are themed for local small business darlings in our town here of Lawrence, Kansas. And so every month we move the press to a different location. So right now it's at a soda shop, with this cool shop where they just have like 1,000 different kinds of like bottled sodas. Each store chooses a local nonprofit charity. And so all the quarters you put in the machine go to that charity. But then it's just a celebration of these little downtown favorite places that we love, where just for a limited time, you can go get a souvenir press penny for that one place. And it moves every month. So on Thursday night, we have an appointment to go pick it up and then move it down the block to the next spot.
So cool. I really love those things that sort of like celebrate like what makes a particular place unique, you know, and sort of like bringing art, I guess, to like the civic space.
Right.
It's really cool.
So thanks. Yeah.
For joining us. Like, do you think you'll ever do anything like Dracula Daily again, or do you have plans for other books?
I don't think I will serialize another book. There's been tons and tons of other serialized classic literature or public domain work that's popped up. I don't want to say copycat, but you know, kind of in the mode of Dracula Daily, which I love. Like basically, if there is like a classic book that you've always wanted to read, probably someone's running a Substack where they'll like send it to you in real time. So I feel like that is like the ground is covered in a very nice way there. I definitely have ideas for other book related projects. I've done other book publishing stuff before, but probably nothing like this. All my silly side projects, it's my excuse to really kind of skip around. So, yeah.
Nice. Well, thank you so much for joining us. It's been really exciting to talk about this project, and you know, I really hope our our listeners pick up Dracula Daily and see what the, finished book brings to the projects. I think it's a really like rich, joyful experience. So thank you.
Well, total pleasure talking with you. Thanks so much. Yeah.
Very welcome. Listeners, please pick up Dracula Daily. By the time that you hear this, it will be out in the world. So please go to your favorite independent bookstore or library, wherever you like to go to get your books. Thanks so much for joining us. It is now time to close this chapter.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.